Everyone, welcome and thanks for attending today's IBM Middleware User Community Ask the Expert session. My name is Kelsey Petrini. I'll be moderating today's webcast. Our topic for today is Troubleshooting ITNM 4.2 Reports, Differences between ITNM 4.2 and previous versions. We have all phone lines in listen-only mode. There will be a question and answer session towards the end. However, feel free to ask a question at any time during the presentation using the questions window located in your dashboard panel. Tomorrow we will have the recording and slides of today's presentation available on the IBM Middleware User Community website for you to access. You'll receive a follow-up link with a link to download, a follow-up email with a link to download the archives from today. So now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We have joining us Blajan-Laza and Jerry Swan. So I will now turn the floor over to them. Raj, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, talking on mute. Hello, everyone. My name is Blajan-Laza. I am an IBM ITNM Level 2 support engineer. And I have been working with ITNM for the last, 8-9 years, and for the last 7 in an L2 capacity. Today, me and my colleague are going to present some of the, let's say, tips and tricks to make your life easier when dealing with ITNM 4.2 reports. First thing, I would like to apologize for the spelling. I'm just saying that I said ITNM 4.2 troubleshooting, not troubleshooting. I hope everyone is going to pass over this little incident. And let's get cracking. Jerry, do you also want to do a quick introduction before we step into it?
Sure. I'm Jerry Swan. I'm also an IBM ITNM Level 2 software engineer. I've been supporting the product for several years. I'm happy to have you guys on. Thanks.
All right. So our agenda for today is to present what is new in ITNM 4.2 from a reports point of view, to talk a little about the BIRT reports, which were an important part of the previous versions, not so much in the new version. We'll be talking also about report customization, how to do it, how to insert a graph, how to check the SQLs. Afterwards, we'll be checking how to troubleshoot a little, how to check which SQLs have been run by our Cognos reports. Last but not least, we'll be doing common errors and workarounds, and some of them are, the most encountered errors that you might be seeing. And at the very end, we'll be doing a Q&A portion. Okay, so first, what's new with the ITNM 4.2 reports? So we had some change in reports from the previous versions, and I'm talking about the 3.9, 4.11 reports. As some of you might know, we had reports which were based on Cognos and BIRT technology, and our ITNM report was a mix of these two technologies. Currently, out of the box in 4.2, we only get the Cognos reports, so the BIRT reports don't exist out of the box when you're installing a new ITNM 4.2 reporting bit. The second major change is the change in summarization. Basically, we don't have the ITM agent available in the installation media. We don't use that anymore. All the summarized data, basically all the historic data, it's now being taken care by Storm. So the raw data is getting summarized by Storm, and instead of having this summarized data in an ITM data warehouse database, it's gonna find its way in the ITNM database under the Ansible data schema. However, it's going to use other tables other than the normal NC poll data, .poll data, raw data table. Last but not least, the Cognos report designer. There weren't major changes done to it since previous versions. It's just that now you really have to use it if you want to modify the reports. Before, you could use also BIRT report designer to modify the BIRT reports. So maybe some of you might have done a lot of customizations in BIRT report designer. So currently just using the Cognos report designer is enough and should be used if you want to customize a certain report or if you want to build a report from scratch. As I mentioned, BIRT reports are no longer part of the product. However, there is the possibility to install a BIRT report package which is in the installation media. However, it is not deployed by default and contains only some reports which, let's say, are more esoteric, something related to OSPF summary, for example. And I will show you the reports themselves in the view. So if we talked about the BIRT reports, you'll be seeing that these BIRT reports, you can find it in the well, precision GUI _GUI/reports folder. It's the ITNM reports.zip file, and in there you also have a README file that will explain to you what you need to install, because there are some steps to have BIRT reports running in the TCR 3.x version. So as you can see, I've put in the presentation part of the README of the TCR BIRT reports package. And as you can see, there are some steps, additional steps that you need to do to be able to successfully import and then run these reports. As I mentioned, if you do import these reports, you cannot edit them with the Cognos report designer. You can only use the BIRT report designer to be able to modify said BIRT reports. Right here, it's a screenshot from, it's a screen grab from my system. As you can see here on the left, these are the RPT design files. These are basically the reports, the BIRT reports that are available, and this is the list. So you have ITNM OSPF details, router summary, summary by device class, ITNM VLAN summary. So you also have an ITNM device availability summary, but in Cognos we also have ITNM device summarization. So let's say that maybe with the exception of ITNM device availability, which could overlap with one of the Cognos reports, the rest of them are don't have a Cognos equivalent. Like I said, these BIRT reports can only be modified with the BIRT report designer, and if you are familiar with the BIRT report designer, this is how you modify the queries inside the BIRT report designer. You get the actual SQL directly in the code. So that's where you can do some modifications if you really want to. However, let's skip the BIRT reports as they are not the main actor in our play. Okay, let's go to report customization. So this is usually what's happening when you're opening the report designer for a certain report. In my case, as you can see in the upper side of the screen grab, this is for bandwidth utilization. These are on the right side, what you can see are the data items, the things that can be used, and you also have the detailed filters. It's what is being run on the report itself. Well, one of the things that I wanted for you to see is that when you're selecting one of the data items, on the right side you get the expression, which is the raw data dot performance. This is actually tells you which fields, and it's the formula used inside the Cognos report designer, and I'll show you how to translate also that into normal SQL. Okay, so one of the things you can do is from the view menu you can use the queries button, and this will prompt you to actually get the on the left side you'll be able to see this properties on the query, and on this property of the query you can see that there is generated SQL field. This generated SQL field, it seems empty, but if you click on the empty space, you will be seeing like this. So if you just click on it, you'll get this, and if you click on this icon that appears, you'll be able to get to well, there's going to be a pop-up, and it's going to say that it's going to only show the SQL for this query, so for this particular data item, and it's not going to show you the full report SQL, which is fine if you just want to see what a certain part of what a certain query does, because the report usually has 3-4 queries. One of the queries is, for example, which domain name. Well, a second query can be for which policy. Third, which template. Fourth, which host name. So each report has several queries, and each query can be actually viewed. The SQL behind it can be viewed. And when you had selected, you can actually view the native SQL. So this is the actual SQL that is being run on the database itself. And also you can see the IBM Cognos SQL, so the Cognos report language. Why would you want to see the native SQL is because, for example, in the Cognos language, you might see, for example, one of the variables, one of the items might be value, and you're not sure from which of the tables that particular value comes from. So that value is a field that is a field that you find also in NC data, data, also in the performance tables, also in the summarized table. So because of that, you might need at some point to know exactly which value is that, and if you're not very skilled or very accustomed to the normal SQL in Cognos, it's a problem to be able to know from which table you are getting the data from. So this is, for example, what gets put as SQL, and when you're selecting that particular SQL, you know, the actual SQL behind the query. One second. Okay, let me show you from my environment. So in my case, we said bandwidth utilization. So this is on my side. So if I select bandwidth utilization, if I open it with Report Studio, it's going to load up the startup. I'm going to say yes, allow access. It's going to say, okay, the package has been updated. It's going to try to validate. Basically, it will ask me to input some data as if I was running the report. I'll use the default chassis ping in this case, and I'll select everything. Inside the Cognos Studio, you're using % as a wildcard. Okay, now it has loaded. This is the actual report. This is what it's going to be shown afterwards with the proper data inside it. So if I go and view, let's say, queries, these are the actual queries behind my report. So let's see the performance data. Okay, performance data, the queries, the property for the query, it's in the lower side. I'm clicking on this generated SQL. It has shown me the icon. If I click on it, I'll get this, and this is the actual native SQL. As you can see, this is what I'm getting inside. I can also check the IBM Cognos SQL, which is, well, a little different, but okay. All right, this is part of the queries and how to check that particular. Okay. Now, let's say that we have modified some queries, but we don't know the whole SQL behind the report, and we want to make sure that we have bird's eye view of what is happening in the report. In that case, we go to Tools, and we select Show Generated SQL. This will actually show us the whole SQL queries for the report. So not just for one single query. This is what you're gonna get. You're gonna get all those, like I said, all those for this particular report, all those four queries, and you get the SQL behind it. Let me show you from my environment. Okay, so Tools, Show Generated SQL, and here we go. This is how it's selecting the poll policy, how it's collecting the poll definition, how it's collecting the domain. I'm also going to show you in a real database how you should be able to run it. Okay, next. This is, for example, how to add graph. I use for this device summarization. So usually when you're when you're trying to put a graph in it, it's still going to be using the same data items that you have defined in this report. So if you want to use something different that hasn't been part of the original report, you need to also create that data item. So you can just use the graph icon to drag and drop or to insert a graphical a graph inside the report. So let me show you how it's done. Okay, so we said before to use this was for device summarization. So I'll be opening that. Okay, this is the default device summarization. You might have caught that I already had the device summarization modified, but I'll modify it again just for you. Okay, first it's going to ask us again. Even if you don't have data on it, you can select to close this, and it will just throw a warning, and you can still work with the report. So it's not necessary to have something in there, so it's okay. Okay, so from the menu you can insert a chart. You can use this, or you can have something more, but these are the possible charts that you can insert. I'll just insert a normal one, let's say column chart. And as I've told you, it's using what you already have as data items. So in here it's the value with min, max, and average, and on the left side here, for example, if you select, you get whatever you had as a data item. Like I said, this needs to be one of the data items that you had before. Aggregate function, it's tell you, okay, so the expression is this. If you select it on like that, you'll be able to see this. It says value. So it's not very, you're not sure if this value is, for example, if you check in monitoring, you have in raw data, you have under pool data, you have value. So you're not sure if it's this value or if it's this value. So because you are not sure, you can either delete and select it yourself, or like I said before, you can check the queries and you can see from which exact table you get that value, and you can use that. But for the time being, if we just do a host name and value, it's going to be sufficient. So if you do it like this, you can save it and you can give it a name, and you can also select under which folder you can see this particular report appearing. Okay, I'll not save this because it's not necessary. All questions, if you can ask them, if you want to ask some questions, just put them into the chat file to ask a question, and at the end of the presentation we'll reply to these. Okay, one of the things that you might want to check, you're not sure if a Cognos report has finished and has done some SQLs behind it, and you're not sure if that particular SQL was run properly. And you're not sure, maybe it's something related to the parameters that you selected or something else. So one of the easiest ways that I found to be able to check the SQL that has been run for Cognos is to modify this xqe.diagnosticlogging.xml file. Basically, you just want to input a debug level inside there to be able to get afterwards in an XML-like log file the exact SQL that was being run on your report. So inside this XML, you have something called event group name JDBC level info. You modified it and you put it to debug. And when you run your report, it's going to create this this XML log inside your reporting Cognos logs XQE folder. And if you check in that XML, you're going to see something like this. So you're basically going to see the exact SQL that you ran when you've run the report. This is very good for troubleshooting as to why you might think the report didn't provide the proper information, or you're not sure as to what why the values are different from what you're expecting. So you can run this manually against the database and get the confirmation of as to why you are saying this. This is what was in that XML. I've also pasted it here for an easier understanding. If you want to check against the database, here is well, I'm using Razor in this example. You just paste this inside your ITNM database connection client, and then you run it. In my case, this query was 0. There was 0 records because there wasn't any data at that time when I've done the screen grab. That's it for me. Like I said, questions at the end of the presentation. Jerry, can you take over?
Sure. Thank you, Raj.
I'll make you presenter.
Thank you.
Okay, you should be able to.
And let me make this slideshow.
We can see your internet. Okay, now we can see the proper slideshow.
Okay, so let's talk about common errors and workarounds. Getting a little bit of feedback here. All right, so one of the first things that you encounter, at least when I encounter when I try to get into it, is this, still getting some feedback. Raj, can you mute?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's better. During like initial configuration, sometimes you'll have to go into the Cognos administration screen, and you'll get an error when you try to get into that screen. It's a PF val 6171. There is a workaround for this, of course. If you go to the URL that I have in that slide, basically the one that I found that works the best is to run this particular workaround where you have to change that BIRT adapter B jar file to old. To do this, once you have done this, you'll have to restart your Jazz server, and then you can get in to your launch configuration so that you can change the administration settings. Okay. Now, once you get past that particular error message, you'll probably, or more than likely, you'll see something along this line where when you get into the administration, you get a pop-up that says undefined. And basically, once you get this pop-up there, you can click OK and it'll go away, but as soon as you try to get further into the administration, you'll get it again. And for that one, there is another workaround, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to get this to work by any other way except for in this accepted answer, the solution one, which is to open the URL, just modify this TCR host to your devices or your web page's host name, and open a separate window. And when you do this, you shouldn't have to log in. It'll just go directly to the administration, and then you can do all your configuration, whatever changes that you need to make. For example, you may need to modify data source or add some user permissions to certain users on the system. And once you do that, again, you'll have to close that window, and you should restart Jazz again, and then you should be able to log back in normally and have whoever you made the change for test it out to see if it works. All right, so the last error that I want to go over is this DPR ERR 2079, and you'll see this. If you see here, I'm looking at the event viewer. You'll see this from like network views or hop view or something. You want to use your right-click tools and run a report directly from there. This will work fine if you open up the actual reporting tool and go in that way, and you are able to run reports on various IP addresses or host names. But it will not work when you, or sometimes it will not work when you do it from right-click tools. The error message that you'll see will be this. It'll pop up an error to your screen. There's several ways to work around this. When you do a search, either in our knowledge base or Google search, you'll see several ways to work around it. We actually have an entry in our 4.2 release notes that shows you how to work around it. A little bit different than I used. I used the TCR cog config. In our release notes, they tell you to use the cogconfig.sh script. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to go in and change the security settings for the Cognos application firewall. The one that I changed is third-party XSS checking enabled. And I changed that to false. And then you save it, and then you restart your Jazz server, and then you're able to do the right-click tools. Let me see if here's a a picture of what it looks like when you launch that Cognos configuration tool. This is the same tool that you would use to maybe change something with a content store, or if there's a host name change, you can go in here and make some changes in here as well, like to your database or something. And then finally, to collect data, if you need to try to review some files in addition to what Rarish went over earlier, there will be some logging that you can pull from your Jazz server that will help you if you get an error. So you can look at those folders there and maybe grab a screenshot, and if you need to open a ticket, just open it and send that stuff with us. Alternatively, there is a pretty good tech note that TCR team put out that you can use it. There's a PD collect that they use, and then it also gives you information about which files you can collect as well. I would save this URL, bookmark it if you need to grab some reporting messages, error messages, and data to collect to send in for your trouble ticket. And that is all I have to go over. So we are now ready to go through some questions and answers. I think I saw one earlier in the question page. So if you have some questions, please send them in. And Raj, maybe you want to tackle that first one?
Yep. So the question is from Mr. Chris Zanley. Apologies if I mispronounced it. So the question states the following: how do you change a CAN existing report from weekly to monthly? And use the device summarization as an example. Our default is weekly. We need monthly. Yeah, that is possible and advisable in your case. Let me become presenter and I'll show you. So I made myself presenter. Okay, show my screen, monitor to clean. Okay, all right. So I have, let's go to bandwidth utilization. Okay, so this is, okay, and let's open device summarization. File, open, no. Okay. Okay, I canceled because I didn't have the time. So currently what you're having here, if I go here, okay, I'll double click it just for you to see it. Okay, so it says value. You're not very sure which value, but it's probably weekly and it's summarized data. Okay, so what you need to do in this case, it's basically modify the actual SQL or to modify from here. So let's take here and we go to select Network Manager Query, Monitoring. We say Summarize Data. We go to Poll Data Monthly and we select Value from here. So let me delete it like this. Okay. And you input it like this. And you select OK. So what you're gonna, so currently I've selected the summarize. If you see here, this is the expression, the actual expression. So you can see it's now per poll data monthly value, and you modify this. You make sure everything is on the same table. If you have a certain value or field inside one of these tables that is not from the same database table, so if you're trying to use for example, in the same report, some value from monthly, and then you do a graph from weekly, it's going to throw you an error and it's not going to let you run that report. So that's one of the things I've noticed when I've tried to have a mix of value fields, value columns, one from a weekly table and one from a monthly table. So that's what you need to do. It's basic. Okay, so let's say we selected also the second one, max. We can go to see expression. Like we said, we are not very sure which expression is this. So we delete this and you select from your summarized poll data monthly what you need. It's going to be value for all three, for min, max, average, because you have the aggregate function. The aggregate function is the actual one doing the maximum, minimum, and average. You can also create a custom aggregate function from your, I think it was in the thinking variables. So let me check. Yeah, you can create definitely something like a min max with additional properties. So I hope this answers your questions. Okay, I'm not seeing an answer to this, but I'll take it that it's okay. If not, you can send a feedback on this presentation, and I'll try to answer. Anyone? Any other questions, please? Oh, okay, thank you. I see that. Okay, I'm glad that it's a good answer for you. Cool. Anybody else? Jerry, I don't see any other questions. Do you see anything else?
No, I don't see anything in the chat or in the question box.
Let's leave it for one more minute. Maybe someone's typing, and if nobody comes forward, we'll wrap it up.
Okay, if there's not any other questions, then we can go ahead and wrap things up.
All right.
It looks like we just got one more.
Oh, we do? Okay. Why don't for that your reports have date selection? Okay, I think it's was related to the full Cognos treatment. So I don't have a full answer for you. It's not a definitive answer. I know that one of the reasons that led to this decision was related to the fact that we are using summarized data produced by Storm, and you might see, for example, some delays when you're checking the performance summarized data inside the weekly, monthly, yearly. You're not going to see something right at the beginning of the monitoring. So, for example, for this bandwidth utilization, sorry, for the device availability, let's say, I've input the chassis, the default chassis policy, and first data came into the poll data, and then I had to wait like 2 hours until I got the data inside the weekly table, which is used by default. First you get data in the summarized daily table, and after 2 hours I've started seeing also data inside the weekly table. So I think one of the reasons was because of this behavior, and also to simplify some of the reports, because we had some customers which had tried using certain data range and were getting issues related to those. However, these are just the default ITNM reports. You can definitely modify, customize your reports to get data ranges. Just keep in mind that the summarized data, if you're using the summarized data for your reports, if you're inputting a certain range and you're using something like the daily or the weekly, well, let's say weekly table, you're not going to be seeing data until the data is summarized. So just keep that in mind. I hope that answers at least partially your question. All right. Thank you, Kaldip. Very good question, and one of the questions I also asked my level 3 development teams at the time when this batch of ITNM 4.2 reports came out. Anybody else? I see one. Can you give the 4.2 report CPF package? Not exactly sure what you mean by that. You mean the BIRT Reports package? Just a second, I'm trying to read. I want report package to modify. No, sorry, I want to report package to modify and then to import it in Cognos Studio. The reports packages are available in the ITNM 4.2 installation media. So if you have an installation media for 4.2, inside of it you have both the Cognos and the BIRT report packages. Let me show you again in my presentation. If you are checking this particular folder, so it's in my case, well, it's /GUI/precision GUI/reports. So inside there you have the 2 zip packages which you can import in your Cognos Report Studio. So if that's what you ask for, these 2 packages are available inside the installed media from ITNM. They are in the packages, in the ITNM 4.2 package. Oh, I meant for data model. I am not sure of this. I have to check, but let me get. Okay, so it's called Deep Parmar. Okay, I'll try to have a reply to you about this tomorrow or after tomorrow. I'll check and I'll get back to you on this. Okay, thank you for this. I'll try to have something for you. Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for your answers. No worries. So you're trying to see that data model. Yeah, I know what you're referring to, and I've just remembered about it. So the answer is I'll still have to check because I don't know if we have that available for for download, and I don't know if if we have something we can give even if internally. So like I said, I'll check and get back to you on this. How can we plot? Okay, this is from Kriti Bhatia. It says, how can we plot two more than the true values on series axis? More than, sorry, how can we plot two more than two values on series axis? So do you want something like a free axis graphic? Have I understood correctly, or is that okay? To tell you the truth, I never tried it, so but let me check. So if I file open, no, let's say device, let's say bandwidth. Okay, so let me check a little. I know it, well, as you have seen from my demonstration, true axis, it's straight out of the box. So 1 second, I'll just deny the prompting and see here, combinations, advanced. I think this might be it. Okay, so that says still the, default measure. You see, this is the z-axis. You actually have access. Okay, so you actually have free access. So the report the report designer comes with a way to have free access, for example. Hope this answers your questions. Kriti, is this answering? Has this answered your question? I actually want to plot two measures in the report. So you mean, okay, I understand. So you want to put, for example, on one axis two values. Is this correct? So you want to have something like maybe value and average value on the same axis. So is this what you meant? On the same graph. Well, okay, it should be able to do that. Okay, so on the, for example, on the y-axis, you can have, sorry, that's not FF on default value. So okay, label, expression. Style, go to query. Okay. I'll have to also check this one. I know it's possible, but I don't know how exactly in this moment. So let me make a note of your name and also your question. All right. So so it's Kuldeep Parmar. So more than two values on the same max, more than two values. Okay. Okay, okay, that one I think we can do, but we'll check. Okay, but yeah. Okay, anything else, guys, that I can try and respond today? Chris, it's asking about cross joins between query, summarize data, pull data monthly, summarize, pull data weekly. Well, like I said, guys, I've tried to do in the same, when I try to add the graph for our example, I've used daily, while my main table was getting data from the weekly table. So when you're trying to use in the when I try to use in the report for the graph the value from the daily summarized data, and in the table the values from the weekly summarized data, I got an error, and the report refused to run. So that's one of the limitations I've saw for when I try to use this particular combination. I'll ask also for if it's something possible, but this needs to be addressed to the Cognos team, because this is related to the way they are doing business inside Cognos Business Intelligence. But good question, and I'll also put it in on my to-do list. Chris Darnier, so usage of joins. Okay, well, of using of multiple summarized tables. Okay. Okay, I got this. Anything else? Okay, I hope I didn't miss anyone. Kelsey, can you please check if I missed anyone?
I think you got everyone.
All right, all right. Okay, everyone, please let me know if there's anything else. Last call, 10, 9, 8, 7, 5, 6, 5. Okay, I think that's about it. Like I said, if there's anything that you can think of afterwards, you can follow in the after the session is over. Some tips improvement. Okay, one more thing. Yeah, I see that it has one more thing from Kriti, but yeah, some tips on improving report performance. Yes, try to use clean SQLs. So the report will run as fast as almost as fast as the SQL that you're running behind it. So if you use convoluted queries or formulas, it will take longer. Try to, if you're building a report from scratch, try using the most simple approach. Try to, if you're doing filtering, haven't shown you filtering, but I guess we can do a follow-up session for this subject. But in the filtering, try to use first, like any normal SQL, first try to use filtering for the integer type fields, and varchar or char, leave it in the last part of the filter. So try to keep your filtering first as lean as possible from an SQL point of view, and also the SQL behind the report as lean as possible. think the report as a representation of your SQLs. If your SQLs are fast, then your report is fast. Okay. Seen one more question. Can we add the drill down report link in Excel report? Another good question. It's still a Cognos question, but I'll put this also on the things to check. Apologies, my main area of expertise is ITNM, but I'll make sure to check this one as well. So drill down link in Excel report. Okay. Well, people have questions. That's good. All right. Thanks. I'll seeing that we are getting on top of the hour, I'll say, guys, please continue asking questions on this session. After the session is over, you can ask. You can put it in the, if I remember correctly, you can put it in the well, after in this session, you have the opportunity to also put the questions forward, and I'll get them and I'll try to reply to them. However, I also have a good list, and I'll try to respond to this as fast as possible. All right, thank you very much. It was really a good session, and I really hope it was something interesting for you guys as well.
Thanks, Raj, and everyone. I went ahead and put the forum discussion link in the chat box, so feel free to continue any discussions in the forum there. And tomorrow we will have the recording and slides of the presentation available, so stay tuned for a follow-up email for a link to download those. And as you exit, if you can take a few moments to fill out our post-event survey, this will help us improve future events. We appreciate your feedback on that, and this concludes today's event. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.